The sky over Earth was never meant to look like that. It burned in shades of red and gold, clouds torn apart by fire that came from beyond the stars. People stopped in the streets, frozen with fear and disbelief as giant shadows appeared above the cities. The air trembled with thunder that wasn't thunder at all. It was the sound of warships breaking through the atmosphere. No one knew what they were. No one could imagine the truth. But when the first ship opened and the soldiers came out, humanity realized it too late. They were called Var, alien super soldiers, created not to live but to kill. They were tall, twice the height of any man, wrapped in dark armor that shimmered like oil under sunlight. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that glowed with cold blue light. They carried weapons that burned through tanks and melted steel. Every movement they made was perfect, every step filled with power. They were not an army. They were a storm. Within hours, the world fell apart. Cities that had stood for centuries were turned to ashes. New York, London, Tokyo all went silent under the weight of the invasion. Skies filled with smoke, seas boiled with falling debris, and the earth itself seemed to scream. Human armies tried to fight back. Fighter jets rose into the sky. Missiles screamed toward alien ships, and soldiers fought bravely on the ground. But bravery meant nothing. The Var were faster, stronger, smarter. Bullets bounced off their armor like rain. Missiles were shot down before they reached their targets. In one day, humanity lost half the planet, and yet, even as everything burned, humans did not break. Somewhere deep underground, far from the falling cities, small groups of survivors began to gather. Soldiers, engineers, doctors, anyone who refused to give up. They hid in bunkers, subway tunnels, and old military bases, sharing food and hope in the dark. Among them was Captain Eli Ward, a man who had lost everything except his will to fight. Eli had been a soldier for 15 years. He had seen wars, disasters, and death, but nothing compared to what he saw that day. His wife and daughter were gone, their home destroyed in the first wave. He didn't cry anymore. He couldn't. There were no tears left in him, only fire. He stood before his small group of survivors, his voice rough but strong. "They think they can end us," he said. "They think we'll kneel, but we are not done. Not yet." Around him, faces lifted, dirty, tired, but alive. They listened. They believed. Because even when hope is gone, a human heart keeps fighting. Above ground, the aliens moved like gods of war. They hunted the remaining humans, rounding them up like animals. Some were killed. Others were taken, no one knew where. The Var did not speak. They did not hesitate. They obeyed commands from their unseen masters somewhere beyond the stars. But the Var were not invincible. Some of their ships crashed. Some soldiers fell. And when the resistance began to search through the wreckage, they found something strange in the pieces of technology. Alive with energy, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dr. Meera Patel, one of the scientists in Eli's group, examined the remains. She was young but brilliant, her hands shaking as she touched alien metal. "This isn't just armor," she whispered. "It's part of them, connected to their minds." Eli looked at her confused. "You mean like a machine?" "Not exactly," she said. "More like they're controlled, linked. Someone gives the order and every soldier obeys it, like a hive." A thought began to form in Eli's mind. Dangerous, impossible, but still a thought. If they were linked, could that link be broken, or better yet, taken? For the first time since the invasion, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but an idea. "If they can be controlled," he said slowly, "then maybe we can control them too." The others stared at him in silence. The idea was madness. How could humans control beings made for war? But deep down they all knew. Madness was all they had left. Outside, thunder echoed again. The alien ships moved across the night sky like black moons. The earth was dying. But in that dying world, inside a dark bunker filled with broken people, a seed of rebellion was planted. It wasn't much, just a spark. But sometimes a single spark can light a fire big enough to burn the stars. Eli looked up through a broken skylight at the red sky above. He clenched his fist and whispered, "You came to destroy us, but you have no idea who we are." In that moment, the fate of two species began to change. One that had come to conquer, and one that refused to die. Because humans never stayed down. They adapted, they fought, and soon the hunters would become the hunted. The nights had grown darker than ever before. Smoke from ruined cities had turned the sky into a gray blanket blocking the stars. Humans hid in abandoned subways, old bunkers, and forgotten factories. The world above was no longer theirs. Every sound of movement made hearts race, a fallen brick, a screech of metal, or the distant hum of alien engines could mean death. Captain Eli Ward moved silently through the tunnels, his boots echoing against the cold concrete. His eyes were sharp, scanning every corner. Behind him, a group of survivors followed, tired, hungry, but determined. Among them was Dr. Mira Patel, carrying a small backpack of equipment salvaged from destroyed alien ships. "We need a plan," Eli said, stopping near a collapsed stairwell. His voice was low, but it carried authority. "We cannot fight them the way they fight. We cannot match their strength, their speed, or their weapons. But there is one thing we do have: our minds, our courage, and our will to survive." Mira opened her bag and pulled out a strange, glowing device. "This is their neural link," she explained. "It connects their soldiers to their command ships. If we can hack it, we can control them, maybe even turn them against each other." A young soldier named Luis scoffed. "Are you saying we can enslave them? These things are gods of war. One wrong move and we're dead." Eli's eyes hardened. "It's not about wanting to enslave them. It's about surviving. If we do this right, we can stop their invasion and save what's left of humanity." The plan was dangerous. They had to capture a VAR alive, something no human had done in decades. Every step above ground was a gamble with death. But Eli had seen too many friends die to give up now. The team moved carefully through the ruins of Paris, where the alien patrols were thin but deadly. Smoke swirled around broken buildings, and the distant hum of alien engines kept everyone on edge. Suddenly a shadow moved. A VAR soldier appeared, larger than any human, its armor glowing faintly in the dim light. "Wait for my signal," Eli whispered. Heart pounding, the team crouched behind rubble. Mira fiddled with a small device, trying to prepare it for the neural hack. The VAR soldier scanned the area, its glowing eyes sweeping over empty streets. When the VAR turned its back, Eli gave the nod. The team sprang the trap. Nets charged with electricity shot out, wrapping around the alien like lightning itself had struck it. It roared, a sound that shook the walls and made birds flee from broken trees, but it was trapped. They dragged the massive soldier to a makeshift lab hidden under the rubble. Mira immediately got to work connecting wires and strange devices to the VAR's armor. The alien thrashed, but there was no escape. Hours passed. Sparks flew, devices hummed, and the air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Then, finally, Mira whispered, "It's done." The VAR's struggles slowed. Its eyes dimmed, then glowed faintly blue. It kneeled, staring at Eli. "You will obey," Eli said, his voice steady. "Do you understand?" The alien's voice was a low rumble, almost human in its anger and confusion. "I obey," it said. It sounded broken, but the meaning was clear. The humans stared in shock. They had done the impossible. They had enslaved a creature that had killed millions. But even as relief spread, Eli felt a strange weight in his chest. He had fought for freedom his entire life. Now he was commanding a being that had been made to destroy. It should have been instinctive to kill, yet here it was, bending to human will. Was this victory, or another kind of war? Days passed, and the captured VAR soldier, whom Mira named Kareth, began to adapt. He could follow commands, fight with humans, and even anticipate enemy movements. Slowly, humans began capturing more VAR, using traps, cunning, and their own ingenuity. Each capture brought a mixture of triumph and unease. Eli trained the soldiers. "Remember," he said, "they are strong, faster than us, and smarter than most humans. Treat them carefully. We do not want to die because we underestimated them, or because they remembered who they are. But the enslaved Var also began to speak. They asked questions. They showed fear. They remembered their families, their purpose, and the life they had been forced to leave behind. Some humans started calling them monsters. Others called them soldiers. But Eli knew the truth. They were victims, just like humans had been. At night, when the others slept, Eli sat with Kareth, listening to the heavy sound of its breathing. "You don't have to like us," he said quietly. "You just have to survive. We all do." Kareth's glowing eyes met his. I do not understand your species. You are fragile, yet you fight as if you are gods." Eli smiled faintly. "We are fragile. That is why we fight." Outside, the world remained in chaos. Alien ships moved over the earth like shadows of death. But underground, in dark tunnels and ruined cities, humans were planting the seeds of a rebellion no alien could have imagined. They were no longer running. They were preparing to strike back, using the very beings sent to destroy them. And deep inside, Eli knew something. Survival was no longer enough. Soon, humanity would fight not just to live but to reclaim the earth, and the hunter would become the hunted. The ruins of Paris were quiet, but it was the quiet that terrified Eli the most. Silence meant waiting, and waiting meant danger. Every shadow could hide a Var patrol. Every gust of wind could mask the sound of death. But today they were not hiding. Today the humans would strike. Eli gathered his team in the underground bunker. Mira spread out a map of the city, marking the locations where the aliens had set up small outposts. "We cannot take them head-on," she said, "but we can lure them. Use their own soldiers against them." Luis, still young and reckless, shook his head. "We are insane. One wrong move and we die. I don't care how many tricks we know." Eli's eyes met his. "I've lost too many friends to be scared anymore. We either fight smart or we die running, and I will not let that happen." The plan was simple in words but impossible in execution. They would capture more Var soldiers, just like they had done with Kareth. Nets, traps, and the neural link devices would do the rest. But the risks were unimaginable. By nightfall, the team moved out. Smoke from burning buildings hung in the streets like fog. The remains of cars and debris made every step treacherous. Above them, distant lights of alien patrols glowed like tiny suns, their blue eyes scanning for movement. Eli motioned for silence as they approached a narrow street. Through the mist, two Var soldiers moved together, their armor reflecting the broken city lights. They were unaware of the humans below, hidden in the rubble. "Now," Eli whispered. Traps sprung. Electrified nets flew through the air, wrapping around one Var, while a burst of EMP pulses confused the other. The captured Var's strength was immense. It tore at the nets with ease, thrashing violently. The other soldier charged, but Kareth, following Eli's command, intercepted it with precision, blocking its path. The battle was short, but brutal. Sparks flew, concrete cracked, and the air shook with the sound of alien roars and human shouts. Finally, one soldier remained alive, but bound, exhausted, and under human control. Mira approached the alien with caution. "We'll do the link," she said, her hand steady. "It will hurt. Be ready." The Var screamed as wires connected, its eyes flashing with pain and rage. But slowly the light dimmed, its body relaxing, knees hitting the ground. The first words it spoke after the process were broken but clear. "I obey." Luis exhaled in disbelief. "We did it. We actually did it." Eli looked at the alien soldier, then at Kareth. "Good, but remember, we are not masters. We are survivors. Treat them with respect or we lose more than the war. We lose ourselves." For days the team repeated the process. Each capture was harder than the last. Each alien soldier brought questions. Why were they here? Did they remember home? Did they dream like humans do? Slowly the humans began to see the Var as more than killing machines. They were beings, forced into war, enslaved by their own leaders. Eli often sat with Kareth at night. The alien's glowing eyes were dim, reflecting the flickering fire from the ruined city above. Do you hate us? Eli asked quietly. Kareth hesitated. I do not know. I was made to destroy you. And yet you have spared me. You have bound me, yes, but also saved me from endless war. It is confusing. Eli nodded. We don't get to choose our enemies, but we get to choose what kind of people we are. The team's efforts were paying off. With each enslaved soldier, the resistance grew stronger. They began using the captured VAR in small strikes against alien supply lines. Cities slowly regained pockets of safety. The aliens, once invincible, were now being hunted by their own kind. But the cost was heavy. Human soldiers fell. Survivors watched friends die. And every time they looked at the enslaved VAR, a small voice whispered in their minds. A reminder that victory came at a price. Were they saving humanity, or becoming what they had always feared? Eli clenched his fists, staring at the night sky. Stars were barely visible behind the smoke, but he could feel something stirring. A shift in power, small but growing. The humans were no longer running. They were taking the fight to the enemy, and in the quiet, Kareth spoke again. Your species. You fight not because you are strong, but because you cannot live without hope. Strange. Beautiful. Eli allowed himself a faint smile. Hope. That's the only weapon they cannot take from us. The battle for survival was far from over. But for the first time, humans felt the tide turning. Their enemies were strong, yes, but they had learned the most important lesson. Humanity could adapt, endure, and fight back even against gods of war. And the war, as Eli knew, was just beginning. The underground bunker was alive with quiet tension. The humans had captured enough VAR soldiers to form a small strike force, but controlling them was a delicate task. One mistake could mean death, not just for the humans, but for the enslaved aliens as well. Captain Eli Ward stood at the center, maps spread out before him. Kareth knelt beside him, its glowing eyes scanning the details. We hit the supply depot tonight, Eli explained. It's well guarded. If we succeed, we cut off the enemy's weapons for weeks. If we fail, we all die. The VAR had grown stronger under human control. They followed commands precisely, but there was an unease in their eyes, a flicker of confusion and pain. They were not happy to be enslaved, yet they obeyed, their loyalty forced by wires and technology. Luis, still jittery from the last capture, whispered to Mira, How can we fight with them? They kill humans without a second thought. How do we trust them now? Mira shook her head. We don't trust them. We guide them. That's enough. By nightfall, the team moved into the ruins carrying weapons, traps, and the enslaved VAR. The streets were silent, broken buildings casting long shadows. For humans, the world had become a maze of death and fear. For the VAR, it was a cage with invisible chains. They approached the depot, a massive structure guarded by dozens of alien soldiers. Eli signaled Kareth, who then issued commands in its strange, guttural language. The enslaved VAR moved silent and precise like hunters circling prey. The attack began. Explosions shattered windows. Smoke rolled through the streets, and the VAR soldiers struck with terrifying precision. The humans followed, dodging blasts and clearing paths. Together, human and alien fought as one. A force the enemy had never anticipated. But victory was not without cost. One of the enslaved VAR hesitated, looking at a fallen human soldier. Confusion flashed in its eyes. Kareth growled softly, forcing it back into the fight. Eli watched, a heavy weight pressing on his chest. We are not just fighting them, he muttered to Mira. We are fighting ourselves. Every time we command them, every life they take under our control, it is on us. Hours passed. The depot was breached. Alien supplies, weapons, and technology were destroyed or captured. Humanity had struck a devastating blow against its invaders. But when the smoke cleared, the streets were littered with bodies, human and alien alike. Kareth knelt beside Eli, its glowing eyes dim. You fight. With power. You have no honor in this, it said, its voice trembling. And yet, you survive. Eli's hands shook. We survive because we must. not because we are strong. We survive because we refuse to die without hope. That night, as the team returned to the bunker, silence hung over them. They were victorious, yes, but the cost weighed heavily. Every enslaved var was a reminder that humanity's victory came at the price of their own morality. Mira spoke quietly to Eli. We are using them because we have no choice. But sometimes, I wonder if we are becoming what we hate most. If they were gods of war sent to destroy us, are we now gods of war controlling them? Eli said nothing at first. He stared at the glowing eyes of Kareth, seeing confusion, fear, and pain. We are not gods, he finally said. We are survivors. And survivors do what is necessary. Yet even as he said it, he felt the weight of every life lost, every command given, every alien bound to human will. He wondered how much of humanity remained in the men and women who followed him, and in himself. The enslaved var were not happy. They were strong, intelligent, and proud. But they obeyed, not because of respect, not because of loyalty, but because they had no choice. Watching them kneel, listening to their broken voices, Eli realized that power could save life, but it could also corrupt the soul. Still, there was hope. The humans had struck their first major victory. The tide of the war had shifted, even if just slightly. More than survival, they had begun to win. Eli looked at the horizon through the broken windows of the bunker. Fires burned in the distance and alien patrols moved like shadows. But somewhere in the night a new thought took root, that humans, fragile and imperfect, could fight not just to live, but to reclaim the earth itself. Kareth knelt silently beside him. You are strange creatures, it said, weak yet unbroken, small yet powerful beyond measure. Eli nodded. That is what makes us human. That is why we will never surrender, no matter how strong the enemy is. Outside, the wind carried the scent of smoke and blood. Humanity had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Yet for the first time, Eli believed something most humans had forgotten in these dark days. Even in chains, even in loss, humans could rise, and when they did, the galaxy would learn that no creature, alien or otherwise, could crush the human spirit. The air was thick with smoke and ash, carrying the scent of burnt metal and human fear. Cities were still in ruins, but humans had begun to fight back, striking at alien supply lines, communication hubs, and small outposts. With every victory, hope grew, but so did the weight on the hearts of those who survived. Captain Eli Ward walked through a ruined street in the outskirts of Berlin, his boots crunching over rubble. Kareth, the first var they had captured, followed closely, its massive frame bending slightly under the weight of obedience. Around them, smaller squads of humans and enslaved var patrolled, ready to strike. But the var were not happy. Their glowing blue eyes flickered with anger and confusion. They remembered who they were, warriors bred to kill, hunters designed for war. And now, under human control, they were fighting against their own kind, forced to obey commands from those they had been sent to destroy. Eli stopped and looked at Kareth. You don't have to like us, he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of exhaustion. You just have to survive. Kareth's voice rumbled low and almost sad. You call this survival? We obey? But our hearts burn with the lives we cannot reclaim. You are strong, humans, but your strength is not honor. You enslave the hunted and call it justice. Eli felt a sharp ache in his chest. The words were true, and he knew it. Humanity had won battles, yes, but at the cost of enslaving creatures stronger than them. Every mission, every victory had demanded obedience from beings who had once been gods of war. Dr. Mira Patel approached, her eyes scanning the ruins for threats. Captain, another patrol spotted ahead. The enemy is regrouping near the factory district. If we strike now, we can destroy their command units and cripple their reinforcements. Eli nodded. Prepare the enslaved var. We move at night. That night, the human-alien strike force moved like shadows. Streets were silent except for the occasional distant explosion. The enslaved var marched in formation, their glowing eyes dim but alert. every movement controlled by the neural links. As they approached the enemy outpost, Kareth whispered to Eli, "Do you understand what you ask of us? To fight against our own? To obey without question? It is not survival. It is a cage." Eli's hands tightened around his weapon. "I understand," he said softly, "and I wish it were different. But this is the war we are in. If we do not act now, more humans will die, and more of your kind will be lost without purpose." The battle erupted with sudden fury. Explosions ripped through broken buildings, fire and debris filling the night. The enslaved Var fought with terrifying efficiency, striking down alien soldiers who had once been their comrades. Human soldiers moved alongside them, dodging plasma blasts and clearing paths. But with every kill, Eli felt the hollow echo of guilt. He watched as one Var soldier hesitated over a wounded alien it had just struck down, its glowing eyes flickering with conflict. Kareth barked a command, forcing it back into action. Hours later, the outpost was destroyed. Enemy communications were cut. Human casualties were fewer than usual, thanks to the enslaved Var. Victory had been achieved. Yet silence settled over the battlefield like a heavy blanket. Human soldiers wiped soot from their faces, breathing hard. The enslaved Var knelt, quiet and obedient, but the weight in the air was undeniable. They were not celebrating. They were prisoners, machines of war now turned tools for human survival. Eli knelt beside Kareth, the alien's massive hand resting on the ground near his own. "I know," he said quietly. "We are not honorable in your eyes. We are not gods, but we fight because we must. Every choice we make is to keep humanity alive." Kareth's eyes glowed faintly, a mixture of pain and understanding. "Perhaps survival is stronger than honor. Perhaps that is why your kind endures. You are weak yet unbroken. Small, yet you shape the fate of the stars." Eli swallowed hard. He wanted to believe that humanity's survival justified what they had done, but deep inside he knew the cost would linger. The enslaved Var carried more than obedience. They carried memories of a life stolen, of purpose forced into chains. As dawn broke, painting the ruins in pale light, Eli stood. Around him, humans prepared for the next strike, their spirits rekindled by victory. Kareth rose as well, its glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. "Do not mistake our obedience for loyalty," Kareth said. "We follow because we must. But the hearts of the enslaved are not free. Remember that, Captain, always." Eli nodded. "I will remember." And in that moment, the war became more than survival. It became a test of humanity itself, of strength, of morality, and of whether humans could rise above the darkness without losing their souls. The humans had learned to fight with the enemy at their side. They had tasted victory, but the question lingered in every heart. Could they win without becoming monsters themselves? Outside, the ruins whispered in the wind. The war was far from over, and humanity, fragile yet unbroken, marched forward, into fire, into darkness, and into the uncertain dawn of a new battle. The city was quiet again, but it was the silence that made it dangerous. Smoke still curled from broken buildings, and the air was heavy with the scent of fire and blood. Captain Eli Ward stood on the roof of a ruined skyscraper, looking out at the horizon. The last alien command ship hovered over the city like a dark moon, its presence a constant reminder that the war was far from over. Around him, the humans prepared their forces. Soldiers checked weapons, engineers calibrated captured alien tech, and the enslaved Var lined up, massive and imposing. Their glowing blue eyes flickered nervously in the dim light, a mixture of obedience and unease. Even after months of fighting together, they were not truly allies. They were soldiers bound by chains of survival. Kareth knelt beside Eli, its head lowered. "You plan to attack the final command ship," it said in a low, rumbling voice. "Do you understand the cost? Many will die.
Even the enslaved will fall."
"Is it worth it?" Eli's jaw tightened. "It's not just worth it. It's necessary. If we do not strike now, Earth will be lost. Every life we've fought for, everything we've survived, will mean nothing. Mira approached holding a small device glowing with alien energy. This is the neural override, she explained. It will strengthen the control over the enslaved VAR during the battle. We can coordinate attacks and anticipate enemy movements. But the strain, it may injure them if we push too hard. Luis, younger and more impulsive than the rest, looked uneasy. So we're asking them to risk everything, and we're controlling them while we do it. Eli met his gaze. We have no choice. It's not perfect, but it's the only way to win. Night fell and the forces moved out. The humans and enslaved VAR advanced silently through broken streets, their path lit only by fires from the last skirmishes. The alien command ship hovered above, protected by dozens of elite VAR soldiers, the same creatures they had enslaved before. This time every step would be decisive. As they approached the command center, one of the enslaved VAR hesitated, eyes glowing faintly with rebellion. Kareth barked a low command, forcing the soldier forward. Eli watched silently, a heavy weight pressing on his chest. The enslaved soldiers were powerful, but each action was a reminder of what they had become. Creatures forced to fight for a species that had enslaved them. The first explosions tore through the night. Human soldiers advanced, dodging plasma fire, while the enslaved VAR struck down the alien guards with terrifying precision. The streets shook with the fury of battle. Eli charged forward atop a captured alien war beast, his rifle blazing. Around him, humans and VAR fought together, a strange and terrifying combination. Yet every victory, every alien killed by the enslaved soldiers carried a bitter weight. No one cheered. Survival was no longer enough. The cost was written on every face, human and alien alike. At the heart of the battle, Eli saw the final command ship preparing to fire on the city below. Mira's voice came over the communicator. Eli, we can't stop it from the outside. You have to plant the disruptor inside. Eli nodded grimly. Then I go in. Cover me. The enslaved VAR formed a protective barrier around him as he approached the ship's entrance. Kareth's massive hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Be careful, human, it said. Even in victory, your spirit carries the weight of everything you've done to us. Eli paused. I know, he whispered, and I carry it willingly. Because freedom is worth any burden. Inside the command ship, alarms blared. Alien soldiers turned to face him, but the enslaved VAR followed, striking them down with precision and speed. Eli planted the disruptor at the core of the ship. Lights flickered, the engine screamed, and a pulse of energy radiated outward, disabling the ship's defenses. Outside, the alien fleet faltered. The enslaved VAR fought their kind with renewed strength, turning the tide of battle. The humans pressed forward, driving the invaders back for the first time since the invasion began. When the smoke cleared, the command ship lay in ruins, and the remaining aliens scattered. Humanity had won. The city, battered and broken, was still standing. The enslaved VAR, however, remained kneeling, silent and obedient, their glowing eyes dim with exhaustion and sorrow. Eli stood among them, chest heaving, covered in soot and sweat. Kareth approached and spoke softly. You have won, human. But remember, we are not free. We obey because we must. You cannot erase what has been done. Eli met its gaze. I know, he said quietly. And one day, I hope we will find a way to make it right. The humans had survived, the aliens had been defeated, and Earth was safe. But the victory felt hollow. The enslaved VAR had fought for humanity, yet they were still prisoners of war. Eli knew the next challenge would be harder than any battle, the fight to reclaim their souls. The dawn broke, pale and weak over the ruined city. Humans and aliens stood together, silent, tired and scarred. The war had been won, but the emotional and moral battles were only beginning. Eli looked up at the sky, the first hints of stars peeking through the smoke. We survived, he whispered, but surviving is only the start. And somewhere deep inside he knew the real test of humanity, mercy, honor, and forgiveness, was yet to come. The city lay in ruins, but the air was quieter than it had been in months. Smoke still rose from shattered buildings, and the streets were littered with the remnants of war. Humanity had won the battle, but the cost was written on every face. Captain Eli Ward walked slowly through the rubble, his boots crunching over broken concrete. Around him the enslaved Var moved silently, obedient but weary, their glowing blue eyes dim and thoughtful. Kareth knelt before him, massive and imposing even in defeat. "You have won," it said, voice low and heavy. "But we remain prisoners. We obey, yet our hearts are not free. Does victory mean nothing if it costs our souls?" Eli looked down at the alien, feeling the weight of every command he had given. Every enslaved Var had fought and killed not out of loyalty, but because they had no choice. And yet they had saved countless human lives. They had become humanity's weapon, and its burden. Dr. Mira Patel approached, holding the neural override devices. "Captain," she said softly, "we have the power to maintain control. We could keep them enslaved and ensure Earth remains safe forever. No alien could ever rise against us again." Louis shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes. "And what about honor?
What about who we are?"
We can't become monsters like them, even if it means survival." Eli's gaze swept over the kneeling Var soldiers. Each one was strong, intelligent, proud, and yet broken. They had been forced to fight against their own kind. They had no voice, no choice, no freedom. Humanity had won, but at what cost? He remembered the first night he had seen Kareth kneel, the first time he had realized that survival could come only through control. The memory weighed on him now like a stone in his chest. He had wanted to protect humanity, but could protection mean enslaving another species? Eli took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We came here to survive," he said, voice echoing through the ruins. "And we did. But survival is not the same as victory. True victory is not in domination. It is in mercy." The humans stood silently, listening. Even the enslaved Var sensed the shift, their glowing eyes flickering in confusion. Eli raised his hand and spoke again. "We will shut down the neural links. Every one of you will be free. Not slaves, not weapons. Free to choose your own fate." A murmur passed through the humans. Some looked uneasy. Some looked relieved. Kareth's glowing eyes widened slightly. You dare release us? After all that we've done under your command?" "Yes," Eli said firmly. "Because freedom is worth more than revenge, and because being human means knowing the difference between power and justice." Mira approached and began deactivating the devices, one by one. The air seemed to vibrate as the control circuits powered down. The enslaved Var looked around, their glowing eyes dimming, confusion and wonder mixing in their expressions. For the first time in months, they were no longer bound. Kareth rose to its full height, towering over the humans, and looked at Eli. "You could have ruled us," it said quietly. "You could have kept us enslaved forever. And yet, you did not." Eli smiled faintly, tired but resolute. "Because a victory built on chains is no victory at all." Slowly, the other Var stood as well, some moving hesitantly, others with the strength and grace of warriors finally unshackled. They were free. The first moments were awkward, uncertain, filled with quiet contemplation. Then one by one they bowed their heads, not in obedience but in respect. "You have shown us something rare among humans," Kareth said. "Mercy. Strength without cruelty, that is. Beautiful." Eli felt a lightness he hadn't known in months. The war was over. The city could be rebuilt. Humans could breathe again. And for the first time, humans and Var could coexist. Not as master and slave, not as enemies, but as survivors of the same conflict. The first rays of dawn crept over the ruined skyline. Fires burned low and the streets were quiet except for the soft hum of recovery. Humans and Var stood side by side, staring at the horizon. There was fear of the future, yes, but also hope. The Earth was free. The enslaved were free. And humanity had proven that true strength was not in domination, but in compassion. Eli placed a hand on Kareth's massive arm. "We could have hated each other forever," he said. "But instead we fight together. That is what makes us human." Kareth nodded. "And that is what makes you worthy of survival." The wind carried the scent of smoke and earth, but also of renewal. Humanity had endured the impossible. They had faced gods of war and lived. They had learned that power without mercy was hollow, and that true victory came not from chains but from choice. Above the ruined city, the sky cleared. Stars shone again. The humans and the Var looked up together, sharing a moment of quiet understanding. For the first time, they were not hunter and hunted. They were survivors united by the trials of war and the promise of a new beginning. And in that moment, humanity knew something eternal. They had not only survived, they had risen.